Welcome to NCBA's Cattleman's Call podcast with host Lane Nordland.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Cattleman's Call podcast. Lane Nordland joining you here today, and there is a light trickle of rain going on out here as we begin September 2025 here at my home place. And speaking of rain, we're going to be talking weather today with meteorologist Matt Makens. He's going to share some insights on what the forecast is for this fall and winter, but also we've heard a lot about screwworm. He's going to share how weather may impact screwworm as well. But first off, Matt, we do need to mention our friends at Ritchie Waters bringing us this conversation today. We'll hear more from them in just a little bit, as well as an education segment from Robbo. But first, Matt, how have things been since our spring update back in February a few months back, I guess?
Well, we kind of were joking back then about, here we are talking about drought again, right, Matt? And bearer of drought. And well, everything was on track until mid-May or so. And then right around mid-May to June, it was quickly becoming apparent a lot of people are going to get rain that we're not expecting to get that rain. And here we sit today, and there are a lot of folks that have had a wonderful year of rainfall, or at least it's been timely. So yeah, the conversation shifted, about 2 months ago as we started off summer.
No, and in that shift, I mean, it was very much appreciated, especially for us in the Northern Plains here in Montana. But it just came a little too late for our dry land hay crops, that's for sure. But even with all this rain, this is just coming from my personal experience. The ground is still dry. This has been very beneficial rain. It is green in September. It was green all the way through August for us. And again, I'm bragging about my firsthand experience too. So we are appreciating it. I just wish it would have came a little earlier. If, since I got to complain about something, calf prices are too good and we're getting rain, I'm going to complain, I guess.
Well, when I tell people about you, I say he's a complainer. That's just what he does. No, kidding aside. We're in the same boat. So, we had some spring moisture, some late big snows, which helped. But yeah, we're kind of in the same boat where the season started off okay, but we really needed our water about a month sooner than what we've gotten it. But the other side, the flip side of that coin, is a lot of the bathtubs you started to drain. And man, they were mud basically just a couple of weeks ago. So the timing of the rain, it's not helping the grass as we're kind of wrapping up our season here, but it is helping that drinking water. So there's two sides to that coin. But yeah, there's other places like the corn region, Iowa. They've had good water. And, USDA is talking about record yield for corn this year. So yeah, you and I, we could complain a little bit, but at the end of the day, we've had much bigger complaints just a few years ago.
So, Matt, what were the factors that really derailed our conversation back in February? And this is I don't even really want to call it a derailment. Maybe it was just a realignment of what track we were going to be on here this spring in terms of moisture. What oceanic factors really played into this hand of getting this unexpected moisture this summer?
I think it was just how prolonged the rainfall kept coming. Okay. So when you look at a summer forecast, especially in the beef industry, everybody's really focused on, the grass and corn. And for corn, you worry about July because of reproduction for the corn. And July is a month when if New Mexico, Arizona, Mexico, if they're getting really heavy rains from the monsoon in July, typically the corn belt is very dry. And that was kind of the talk that started the summer forecast of, okay, well, we're anticipating this. We're anticipating drought to hit by July. But the moisture just kept coming throughout July. And I think, a couple of factors were just delayed or slowed this transition way down. And one of those is kind of between the U.S. and Greenland. So we're talking about way out there. But that part of the Atlantic was cold. And it still is today, but it's warming up. But it was cold enough, and what that kind of does is it forces the atmosphere above it to react in a way that kind of slowed everything upstream down a little bit. It'd be like throwing a big rock in a river. Upstream, you're going to adjust. And that was one factor. Another factor, especially with cereal grains and some of the Central Plains pastures, you worry about kind of what the water is doing off of Baja, California. And that didn't necessarily transition as quickly either. But I think the biggest factor for a lot of us was that kind of slowing of the pattern down, which is not, I mean, it's happened before, but super rarely.
Mm-hmm.
And a third factor, we could argue that the wildfire smoke in Canada being so extensive may have had a contributing factor in the overall pattern too. So at
That's
least two, if not /3 factors that just were not seen in February that became apparent by May and June.
That's really interesting. You bring up the wildfire smoke. What are the studies on that? Could you just maybe expand a little bit on that point? Because we haven't had the wildfires because of this moisture as severe as we have in August, September that we've seen in years past here in the northern plains of the U.S. But how can that smoke and what are the studies surrounding that? How is that impacting potential weather patterns?
Just super anecdotal, general ways. Okay, the amount of smoke that was covering Manitoba, Saskatchewan for a long duration of time. You're bouncing more sunlight back into space because there's the smoke in the air. And you're cooling off the surface. Well, the atmosphere is going to respond to that cooling area, and it was so extensive that has a profound effect on the atmosphere. In hindsight, like in months down the road, we can look back at the summer and say, yeah, smoke had this much contribution. But let's go back to a few years ago. There is published research that shows wildfires from Australia, this was years ago, were massive. And that smoke drifted over the Pacific Ocean and it cooled off a massive area of the Pacific Ocean, which then was kind of a catalyst for the massive La Nina 3-year event we had from 2020 through 2023. So there is research connecting smoke and the overall patterns. It's too early to say how much Canada's smoke this year has had, but if you look at past research and just how extensive it was, there is a factor, whether it's 1% factor, 30%, who knows at this point, but I do think that there was a factor in it, just helping to kind of slow things down, forcing the storm flow to kind of go around it, if you will. And that favored Alberta, you all in Montana, at times Nebraska, at times Iowa, certainly Kansas, Oklahoma.
Well, again, a lot of beneficial moisture for our pastures. Our wheat farmers, on the other hand, our barley farmers had a tough go with harvest, especially trying to get that winter wheat up. And the winter wheat looked fantastic, Matt, around our region. But we had a lot of moisture and folks would start cutting. And then that big black wall would start moving in and moisture. And our spring wheat, though, we had the worst ratings in the nation here in Montana. The spring wheat, a lot of guys didn't even cut it. A lot of hay, or they might not even have touched it. But I guess my point being there too, a lot of sprouted grain crops as well. So I do want to send out our sympathies to our grain guys out there because their prices aren't great. And again, this weather obviously impacting northern tier producers as well on the grain end of things.
Sure. Because the timing became critical for different sectors, right? Like, especially for your spring. But take Oklahoma, which had, they dusted in their winter wheat crop.
Mm-hmm.
They did get a big system the end of October, early November, which, that wheat came in strong through December. But then all of a sudden they had bare ground and a lot of cold through the winter. And by March, I was starting to hear, hey, we're not going to, it's not going to wake up. And then they started getting water in April. So the similar headaches all over the place, just at different times in the time series, Yeah. And I think as we go late this year and early next, we'll probably have those similar headaches where some folks are we can shut the water off, and others are like, we've got to have it. We dusted in again this year. It's emerged, but we've got to get something. I think we'll go through those similar growing pains this next year.
Well, again, a lot of factors impacting all aspects of agriculture. And Matt, don't go away. I'm looking forward to learning more about your comfort index, folks. Stay tuned in with us. We're going to have a forecast.
It's not the home thermostat.
No.
Yes, okay. It's different. Very different.
And don't touch the thermostat. That's a rule in my house. Uh, we're going to be back with Matt, but first we're going to hear a comment from our friends at Ritchie. As Matt was saying, we've got good water out there, but you can have consistent water with Ritchie Waters and all that they provide producers in the countryside. But also, we're going to hear an education segment from our friends at Robbo talking about so many factors impacting the industry on the financial end of things. And then we'll be back with Matt right after these words from Ritchie and Robbo.
The confidence of having water in front of these cattle all the time was very nice. Having good, clean water to our cattle every single day is something that we kind of take for granted, but it shows up in a lot of your breed back on every herd. Good, clean water every single day is very important for this operation to continue at a high level.
Ritchie, because hydration is everything.
Well, hey, we're going to take a brief break from our conversation with Matt Makens discussing our weather trends to chat with Robbo Senior Relationship Manager Matt Wilson, who is based out of Texas. And we're going to be talking about the opportunities cattle producers can find amongst the many uncertainties facing the industry today. And Matt, what are you hearing consistently at the farm gate? We obviously are having some pretty good times here in 2025, but what are some of the things you're hearing from producers out in the countryside?
Well, I think the volatility in the markets is top of everyone's mind. It complicates a lot of risk management strategies, and just generally speaking, creates a lot of uncertainty. Even though it creates a lot of opportunity, I think it creates a lot of concern as well. Not being able to predict things with this high degree of probability as you would wish.
And with that, Matt, we are seeing these current cattle prices reach these high levels, but we also have high interest rates as well. So what does the lending space look like during times of volatility with higher prices, but also high interest rates?
I think one thing that becomes a premium is just equity, pure equity in an operation. In times of uncertainty, in times of increasing costs, higher levels of equity are simply going to be able to give you a little more room to navigate, a little more, maybe present a few more options in a time of uncertainty.
And what should ranchers consider when working with a lender, and what do those conversations typically look like, especially in times of high risk?
I think one thing that a bank customer, a client really needs to think about is what is the fit for your lender? Is your lender a knowledgeable ag lender? Or are they maybe even more than that, knowledgeable in the particular sector of agriculture that you're operating in? So I think sector expertise for a bank should be high on the list of priorities for a customer.
Robbo also provides a lot of research and insight to so many issues, even outside of the beef cattle industry. How can producers listening to our conversation today engage more with Robbo, but also learn more about the research and the studies that are put out periodically?
We can supply research materials that are sector specific upon request. Would encourage folks to engage with their Rabobank relationship managers for some of that information. There's also some of it that's available through our websites.
Well, again, we thank you, Matt and Rabobank, for joining us here today and helping us bring our weather conversation and risk conversations all onto the same playing field. And for more information for our producers out there, make sure and visit rabobank.com, where you can learn more about all they provide producers on the knowledge end, but also on the lending end as well. Matt, thanks for joining us here today.
Thank you.
And with that, friends, we'll go back to our conversation with meteorologist Matt Makens. Again, a big thank you to our friends at Ritchie for sponsoring today's podcast, and I hope you took a few grains of wisdom there from our friends at Rabobank as well. Well, as we come back to our conversation with meteorologist Matt Makens, we were talking about those factors that influenced precipitation here this summer, but you've actually been working on a new tool for cattle producers to use to help with animal welfare and cattle health. Can you tell us more about what this Comfort Index is and how long you've been working on it, and really how the idea came to surface for you?
Okay, so this is primarily through Cattle Facts, where, it's a feeding group, right? So when you hit these spells, we had some in July and some in early August, okay, where we everyday folks will read the newspaper or whatever it may be, and we hear about the heat index, right? Well, yeah, heat index has a factor on cattle too, as it does any living thing, plants, whatever it may be. But when it comes to cattle, there may be other factors that can impact their just day-to-day health. And maybe it's the amount of sunshine while it's hot. Maybe is there wind? Is there no wind? All these other environmental factors come in. Or perhaps recent rain just at that feedlot or pasture, whatever it may be, would increase that element there. So what this tries to do is give a 7 to 10 day outlook for cattle producers that just says, yeah, you're hearing this heat index thing, but there's a lot more to it, more contributing factors than just heat and humidity. And basically it's a product that develops and furthers research from Oklahoma, furthers research from Australia on cattle health. And it's tied back to, currently it's not breed specific, but we can get there. And it basically monitored cattle in all of these weather situations and their breathing rates, and would note when there would be an immune response or slow rate of gains or something like that. So we have science that combined all these weather factors together and said, yeah, this element's high stress, this element's medium stress, this one is extreme stress. So it's just kind of an index product to really make common sense use out of those headlines that people hear about of heat index values being whatever. It equates it to the animal itself.
So how are producers going to be able to utilize this and access it?
This year, kind of as a prototype, it was sent via social to NCBA's channels, just like an early heads up. Hey, next week you're hearing the headlines that heat indices are going to be bad in the cities, but what about for us? The last I checked, we're not feeding cattle in cities, but so that's kind of the primary channel. When we would approach these heat events, certainly the Cattle Facts guys, they get fed the product, and they know going into the future, we'll make efforts to make it much more available so folks can say, I'm hearing about it, and then have not just social, not just C2C if we're doing that, it'll be broad brush so they can easily access it.
Now, I think producers could also utilize this too. I always think of like the book and movie holes when they're like, I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
That's too damn bad. Well, that's how I kind of feel when I'm fencing and it's hot out. And maybe I could also just be like, I'm going to use the comfort index and stay inside today,
Yeah.
I got a lot of eye rolls from our listeners and probably Sarah Gregory, our producer, on the back end of that comment, but I thought it was funny.
You're always looking for an excuse to quit your fencing. I've heard that about you.
Well, my dad, my dad's a contract fencer. That's what I grew up doing. That's what he did to pay for his cows, and I can build a good fence. I just don't enjoy doing it.
I will make the lane comfort index.
Yes.
And provide it to you. So that day, should you fence or not fence?
Yeah. I mean, I'll go right through cows all the time, but the fencing, the real work, that's, that's really the determining factor of my mood out on the range some days. But, when we look at the feeding aspect of this too, with the comfort index and bringing that maybe transparency to consumers too. I find it interesting because when I was over in Australia this past spring, they had law passed that all of their feedlots will be required to have coverings for their cattle in feedlots, and not necessarily a barn, but shades over their feedlots. Again, I'm not trying to get into the politics of it or anything like that. That's just what those feeders are having to implement in Australia. And the part of the country that I was in, very, very much similar to the conditions we see here in the Northern Plains and Midwest. It wasn't the outback, but how important is it, though, when we're looking at this too, for this could be a tool for producers to utilize in the protocol that they put into place when taking care of their cattle during these heat cycles?
To raise the best beef, quality has to be there. And what's one of the biggest impacts, as we all know, on cattle, and that's weather. It's when they're calved, whatever, weather is critical. And, I know that's the Australian policy now. We're seeing land use changes in many of our lots, going to concrete only, or, that kind of thing too, or different bedding materials. So if we're going to raise the best quality beef, we have to do that mindfully, knowing with the best weather data we have how to do that. And, we kind of talked about the heat side of this, but Cattle Comfort Index also translates to cold weather. And for most cow-calf operators, that's when this index will be helpful, because it will tie in. Now we're not talking heat. Now it's cold stress. And a lot of us like to calve in cold months. And La Nina patterns, like where we're headed, tend to bring sharper, cold snaps of air. So products like this, there's the feedlot entity, especially with heat, but there's also the cow-calf side. When it comes cold time, what are you looking at? What's the stress on that newborn? What's the stress on the mom? All of those factors. So from beginning to end, if we're raising the best quality beef and we know weather's a factor, let's use weather to our advantage. And that's what this tool is doing.
Well, Matt, I'm looking forward to seeing more of this as well. And we can do when we meet next time for an in-person podcast, probably here at Cattle Convention, looking more at this too, and expanding upon really how this can be a tool for producers in every sector to utilize. Because like you said, I'm glad you brought up the cow-calf side of things, because for some reason people like to calve in Montana in February. It doesn't make sense to me. We don't do that, but people do it. So
yeah. And water resources, it's not, it'll be a tool for that too. Like I alluded to, our bathtubs were drained. It was basically mud. A product like this, do I need to buy some water? Do I need to ship it in, knowing that on day 8, cattle stress is through the roof? They're going to be consuming a lot more water. I know I don't have enough. It has applications across the spectrum for livestock.
Yep. Well, I could do a whole different podcast on those feedlots that I saw over in Australia. The cement bottoms, they bring in shavings and clean them out. And the one Rangers feedlot that we were in, it didn't smell like a feedlot. Like it did not smell like a feedlot here. I mean, it's just, I would encourage folks, if you want to see just how slick some of these feedlots are across the world. And I know there's great feedlots here in the US, not being critical of them. I was shocked because, usually when you go to a feedlot, you smell like a feedlot.
Right.
We didn't. I was very surprised. And maybe they just took us by the ones they just cleaned. I don't know. But
everything was freshly shampooed and Lysoled right before you got there.
Yes, it was.
No.
But jumping back to our weather conversation, Matt, this past month, back in August, in your National Cattleman article, you discussed weather's relationship to the New World screwworm. Obviously, that's been top of mind for producers across the nation, but particularly those in our southern states that just a few decades ago worked so hard to eradicate that. What is that relationship between weather and the screwworm, and how can that impact also the efforts to eradicate it there in Mexico and Central America?
So in the 50s and 60s, when we got rid of this pest, all the studies done since then really focused on, the environment that the fly thrived in. And that environment is temperatures from roughly 58 to 110 or so, within that range. This fly really loves 81.5 degrees Fahrenheit. That's what the research shows. They love that. That's when they're friskiest, okay? So we know that we would have that kind of temperature range, that ideal temperature across, a lot of the states during the summer and fall. And from there, we can get more specific on, if we know we have an environment that favors the fly. So if they arrive, weather's not going to hurt anything for a long time. But what is this spread? Why does it spread from, say, Central America through Mexico northward? What was that? So when the research done, again, a long time ago. They equated very quickly, well, it's this monsoon thing. And the monsoon is when we change kind of the prevailing wind, if you will, the main weather pattern from spring into summer. And that's when we start to bring in the moisture from the Gulf and bring it over Mexico. And we hit West Texas, New Mexico, Arizona with those heavy rains. That's the monsoon. That was connected to be a main driver of pushing the flies from Central America into Mexico and then the States. So we have that factor. So we know we're not going to prevent the monsoon. I mean, come on. So we know we should expect the flies to be pushed or migrating northward as we have the monsoon, and we're in the monsoon now, and it's been strong over the last few weeks. So in theory, if the fly gets here because of the monsoon, because they like the moisture, they like those temperatures, what can the weather do about it? Well, we have to get things cold. So I went back and historically looked at, well, when do we get cold enough to get rid of this thing? And for parts of South Texas, Florida, you don't. You really don't get ever cold enough in the winter to get rid of the fly. But central, northern Texas, all the way up through we get cold enough sometimes in October, but usually November or December. So, the sterile fly process is the main thing to control these things. But if we don't have that, then we have to rely on the weather. And what folks can read about in the August National Cattleman is, okay, well, yeah, we can freeze in October, but the environment still likes the fly, or the fly likes the environment, I should say, in South Texas, Florida, those areas year round. But yeah, when we started hearing about screwworm migrating through Mexico and the border issues, there's been a lot of research done on weather's impact on that, and weather is one of the main forces of spreading that fly around. So if I had $1 bajillion to control the weather, we could control the fly. We don't have that, so we have to look at other sources to control the screwworm situation.
Well, again, very insightful there, and just something else to think about as we continue to monitor that New World screwworm situation, and hopefully all the efforts that are going in to prevent it spread north are effective, but we need to stay vigilant on that.
There's all kinds of, I made all kinds of maps to show you any of the state. When do you usually freeze? How long are you cold? When is the environment favorable for the fly? So all that stuff is out there. It's written in the article. You can find the data or maps. Yeah.
Well, again, check that out in your inbox or in the paper version as well for the August National Cattleman article. Well, hey, what were the name of Columbus's ships? The El Nino, the La Nina, and the Santa Maria? Is that what they
Pinto,
were? I think
Pinto car or something like that.
Yeah.
The Pinto.
Okay.
I think the Ford A Pinto, I think, was the third ship. Yeah.
That was the third tour. That was correct. Our dad jokes are definitely trying to come through here today, or at least my failed ones.
They're going to get us national. They're going to send us on the road together.
We're actually going to be one of the opening acts there at the Ryman for the NCBA CattleCon night at the Opry there come February.
I like it. We should do it.
I'll be the next Minnie Pearl, it sounds like. But as we look at, of course, we always talk about El Nino and La Nina, and I am famous for mixing them up because I'm just a simple person up here in Montana. But as we look to our forecast for the remainder of the summer and into the fall and winter months, the conversation about a possible La Nina has surfaced here over the past few days. What are we looking like for the nation? What is your forecast now? What was it a few weeks ago? And now with that La Nina conversation coming into it, what should folks across the nation be considering here as we, get ready to ship calves for so many folks to make plans for winter? What's top of mind for yourself right now?
Okay, so the oceans are cooling off in this region where we define El Nino and La Nina. And by cooling off that area of ocean, and it will continue to get colder and colder and colder through November, okay? That forces the atmosphere above it to react in a certain way. So by cooling this area of ocean off, in this year's case, we're forcing the atmosphere to send the storms to British Columbia, the Pacific Northwest, your area, Montana, the northern plains. And by keeping the storms up there, we're opening the door to drought from the southwest to spread through the southern plains and the southeast. All by changing this ocean thing, right? Because we're just sending the storm somewhere else. So the overall pattern for most of winter, if you look at the average map for the winter, moisture favors the Northwest, your region, the Northern High Plains, and Great Lakes. It does not necessarily like the southern tier of states. Temperature-wise, La Niñas can bring you the sharper, colder stuff that lingers longer, especially in Montana, especially the Dakotas, Nebraska. So immediately we can start thinking about, okay, maybe my forage isn't as strong in the southern plains, but maybe my wheat in the northern plains is better because of the moisture. But at the same time, if I'm thinking calving, like you mentioned February for Montana, La Niñas bring in more cold shots. They're more frequent. They can be colder. They'll last longer. So that's a factor if I'm thinking through calving. And what I've described is kind of textbook case. But remember, like 15 minutes ago, we talked about, well, this area of ocean off Baja and this off Greenland. That's just textbook case of what can happen. But there's all these other factors that can kind of offset it a little bit. And I think in this case for winter, Oklahoma will have some moments of water, which will be good for their wheat. But at the end of the day, we're going to be hearing more headlines in the industry and elsewhere about La Niña winter is here. And when you hear that, that is mostly drought for the south, some water for the north, but look for colder impacts on the industry. That's when you hear La Niña.
And so what has been the trend, just to refresh our memory, how many La Nina winters have we had, say, in the past 5 or 6 years, or maybe neutral patterns? What has that been?
All but one. We had one El Nino event. It was brief. It had some impact, but it was relatively brief. But recall 2020 through 2023. That was 3 years of La Nina, arguably much stronger than what we may see now. And last winter, yeah, we kind of hit the La Nina threshold, but it was moderated by all these other factors. So it wasn't necessarily that strong. Yep. I think if somebody really wants a year to kind of equate to, there are two that continue to pop up as you look at history, similar for this year. One would be last year, so 24 into 25. That's a similar analog similar year. Another one would be 2020 into 2021. So, we're Mother Nature's preferred this regime, if you will, of these kind of La Nina winters versus anything else the last 5 years.
Well, again, it's just interesting to watch these weather patterns and just how quickly something can change just based off of wildfire smoke, as you mentioned, or just what's going on out in the ocean. But Matt, I always appreciate you bringing us up to speed and your thoughts on what's occurring and what could occur. Before I let you get back to your day, any last thoughts here as we move into fall, just for producers across the region and nation about the importance of just keeping track of these weather patterns day to day, but also the future forecasts as well?
I'm always thinking the optimism of the summer we had, right? And we're trying to rebuild and heifer retention and those numbers. This was a really encouraging summer overall for the industry. You and I may argue different couple weeks here and there, month here and there, but a positive for the industry that we didn't get into a really strong La Nina, because then it would be drought. Mm-hmm. But I do caution that we're in this, we've chatted about this before, that the pattern we've been in since the late 1990s really likes drought years more often than surplus years. And just with that in mind, let's be cautious. Hearing we have La Nina, what that can mean for next winter and next summer. We can hope for a one-off that's doesn't pan out, but let's be mindful as we celebrate our recent water. We go forward knowing that the big term outlook still is leaning on the drought side of things.
Yeah, I think obviously we're in the livestock business and we're eternal optimists with it too. And getting this moisture, seeing these prices that we're getting, I think folks are a little bullish right now that heck, let's maybe hold a few heifers back, or let's buy some, let's buy some pairs or bred cows, maybe some pairs next spring. Again, I think we're very bullish right now, which I'm glad we are. We're very optimistic, but I think there's a lot of need for a little bit of caution right now too, especially with these interest rates. And
Yeah, like 2017 always pops up as kind of a similar year weather-wise to where we are now. And if we recall 2017 from the cattle market standpoint, we were coming out, rebuild phase, perhaps some cases rebuilt too quickly, and then drought smacked us, right? So I think you're right that some of us, a lot of us, most of us are thinking, yeah, this year's great, but we learned something 8 years ago. Is my math right? Yeah, 8 years ago, during that rebuild. And yeah, I think people are more cautious in this approach.
yeah, 8 years ago, I think I was like a freshman in high school 8 years ago. I think, if my computing is I wish my knees didn't hurt when I woke up. I knew there was a weather pattern coming through. My right knee was hurting yesterday, all day yesterday, man.
Hey, you shouldn't go fencing, okay?
No,
Because you need to protect your knee, get it back healthy again. So
yes.
yeah, it's my recommendation you don't touch that fence. Yeah,
I'm going to tell my father-in-law that.
Yeah.
So
okay, tell him that Colin Woodall said that's okay for you not to fence, not me. That's
okay. Yeah, I'll put that on the absence letter. Well, Matt, I appreciate your insight and thoughts, and of course, a lot to think about for producers. Some good times in the industry. I think I need to remind everyone, let's enjoy these prices. Let's look at what our operations are doing. Let's pay off some debt as well. I think that's always something that we need to consider too. And let's enjoy these prices, and let's look towards the future and plan to have success in the countryside too. But again, a lot of conversations around the future definitely coming up on the podcast over the next few months. But Matt, I truly appreciate you taking some time and admitting that you were wrong about the forecast and that we received beneficial moisture here this summer.
It's been quite a summer that was not anticipated. Yep.
Well, you can't cuss the weather guy when moisture comes in good amounts.
Oh,
so.
people, no. Here, you want to go here? I got some emails right here on this clipboard. There's a stack of them of complaints. So I think people know that they can always yell at me.
Yeah, my favorite ones recently are just, and I think I've told you too, just the folks that think we're too happy talking about good prices about the cattle business. That's always surprising me. So.
You and I were full of surprises.
We're full of surprises and great emails. That'll be when I retire someday at the age of 99, when all my debt is paid off, I will release my memoir of all the emails and phone voice messages I've got from people over the years. It'll be a good book that nobody will read. But with that, Matt, thanks for joining us, and hope to see you soon at CattleCon. That's coming up in February. If you have not registered for CattleCon, make sure and do that today, the first part of February. Music City, USA, Nashville, Tennessee. You can register and get your hotels right now. Just visit CattleCon. Let me look up the official CattleCon 26 website. We're not even going to edit this. We're just going to keep going because Lane just needs to. It is convention.ncpa.org, February 3rd through the 5th in Nashville, and you will see Matt and I down there. So Matt, get your new get your white cowboy boots like all the bachelorette parties have down there. So,
well, how do you know I don't already have some?
Well, that's
which
true.
Pair of white boots I should bring, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that is true. That is
Just
true.
remember, we bought matching pairs in San Diego at summer business meeting a couple years ago.
New boot goofing. That's what we did. New boot goofing.
Genuine ostrich. 3 payments. New boot goofing.
Well, with that, friends, get some new boot goofing and head to Nashville February 3rd through the 5th. To play us out, here's our friends at Ritchie Waters. Thanks for joining us. I'm Lane Nordlund. We'll catch you next time.
The confidence of having water in front of these cattle all the time was very nice. Having good, clean water to our cattle every single day is something that we kind of take for granted, but it shows up in a lot of your breed back on every herd. Good, clean water every single day is very important for this operation to continue at a high level.
Ritchie, because hydration is everything.
Thanks for tuning in to NCBA's Cattleman's Call podcast with Lane Nordland. For more information, visit ncba.org and make sure to subscribe to the podcast today.